It's been a while since I made one of these. Hey there, I'm Leonell, and in this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to create this awesome animation within After Effects. So, let's roll the intro. Okay, and let's start off by opening After Effects. And this is the animation that we are going to be creating first. First, create a new composition and set the width and height dimensions to 1080p and the frame rate to 30, and I'm gonna set the time duration to 2 seconds, and you can name the composition whatever you want. Okay, first start off by clicking on the text tool, and I'm gonna set my font to American Captain. The download link will be in the description, and I'm gonna type in a word. Okay, and press Ctrl Alt Home on your keyboard to center the anchor point, and then go to the window tab and then open the align window, and then you can align it to the center. Press on S on your keyboard, or you can go to transform properties of the text layer and then select scale. So what I'm going to do is set a keyframe at about 15 frames and another keyframe at 3 frames, and I'm going to set the scale to 0. Okay, and then after about 10 frames I'm going to increase the scale to about 400 and press T on your keyboard to open opacity. I'm going to hit a keyframe on opacity at about 17 frames, and then at about 24 frames I'm gonna make the opacity 0. Hit U on your keyboard to open all the keyframes. Okay, and I'm making another keyframe at about 10 frames for the scale so that the movement stays uniform for about 5 frames. Okay, next I'm gonna select all the keyframes for scale and then right click on one of those keyframes and then go to keyframe assistant and click on easy ease. Or you can use the keyboard shortcut function F9, and then it gives a smooth motion to your animation. Now click on the graph section and then make the graph into something that looks like this. Okay, now it looks smooth. Now go to the effects and presets panel and search for the echo effect. Drag and drop it onto the text layer and then change the number of echoes to 8 and the starting intensity to about 0.2 and the decay to about 0.8. You can tweak the values as to whatever you want according to your animation. Click on this icon right here to turn on the motion blur. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this animation, which is stage number 1. Okay, stage 2. I'm gonna go ahead and hide the previous layer, and using the text tool I'm gonna set the font to Poppins extra light, and you can type in whatever the text you want. Like the previous one, I'm gonna center my anchor point by clicking Ctrl Alt Home and click P on your keyboard to open position. Okay, and then I'm gonna hit a keyframe at about 15 frames, and then going back to about 7 frames I'm gonna move it down just like that, and at about 20 frames I'm gonna hit a keyframe again. At about 1 second time I'm gonna move it up. Okay, and just like the previous one, we are gonna do a crossfade effect at the end by putting an opacity keyframe starting from 100 and then ending at 0. Okay, and then click on the motion blur, click F9 on your keyboard to ease the keyframes and go to the graph and then make it something like this. Okay, it looks kinda off, so I'm gonna change the graph to something like this. It looks a little bit better now. Just like the previous one, we're gonna put the echo effect back again and then set the number of echoes to 8, the starting intensity about 0.2 and then the decay to about 0.8. And it looks good, and that's it for stage 2. Okay, now we are in stage 3. We're gonna add a gradient effect onto our echo animation. I'm gonna go ahead and hide the previous layer and create a new text layer. I'm gonna set it to extra bold and type in whatever word you want. Just like the previous one, I'm gonna center it. I'm gonna do the same position animation, but I'm gonna make it come from the top this time, and I'm gonna do the same stuff as the previous one. Easy is the keyframes, change the graph like that. Okay, I'm gonna copy and paste the echo effect from the previous one into this one, because why not? Looks good. I'm gonna change the decay to about 0.8 in this one. Okay, and this is where the magic part happens. I'm gonna click on the text layer and then hit Ctrl D on the keyboard to duplicate the layer. I'm gonna put the duplicate layer below the previous layer and then go to the effects and presets and search for the fill effect. Drag and drop it onto the second layer, change the color to yellow. Then what you have to do is shift the second layer about 2 frames to the right, and then I'm going to duplicate it again, then change the color of the third layer to orange, and then I'm going to shift that 2 more frames too, then doing that step again but setting the color to red this time. Okay, and this is what we have. You can change the colors to whatever you want and get any kind of gradient that you like. And moving on, this is a little bit complex, so I say that if you did not understand any of the previous 3 stages, you are gonna be a little bit messed out. So first I'm gonna say watch this video again and then practice those 3 and then come back to this stage. Okay, let's start. So in this, I'm gonna go ahead and hide the previous layers and I'm gonna create a new text layer, and I'm gonna type in bounce, and then it doesn't really matter what you type here or the font or whatever. It just matters that it's just the text layer. Go to the effects and presets panel and then search for path text. Drag and drop that effect onto the layer. Then it's gonna ask you to type the word that you want and then set the font, the style to whatever you want, and then you get something like this. Here you can change the shape of the path to something like this, a curve, because that's what I like, or you can change it to whatever you want. And I'm going to increase the size and the tracking, and this is how you animate it. You have to open the paragraph panel and then set the alignment to center. Set a keyframe to the left margin and move it a couple frames to the front. Okay, and set the left margin value to about -3000 so that the text goes out of the frame, and copy and paste this keyframe once again so that we can animate the bounce effect. Move it a little bit more to the right and again copy and paste it one more time, and then move it a little more less than the previous one to the left. And then one more time. Now I'm gonna do the same thing but to the right. It looks kinda janky. We're gonna fix that. Just like we did on the previous times, I'm gonna ease the keyframes and then make the graph of the last 2 keyframes into something like this. And I'm gonna move the last keyframe a little bit forward. It gives a pretty good bouncing animation. And now we are gonna add the echo effect. I'm actually gonna copy and paste it from the previous layer onto this one, and I think it looks a little bit off with the motion blur, so I'm gonna turn it off. This is what it looks like. Okay, I'm moving on to the second part of this stage, and that is the text bouncing up to the center part. To create this, I'm gonna select the layer and then click Ctrl Shift D, and what that does is it's gonna split the layer, and I'm gonna delete the echo effect from the second layer. Then open the control points, and you can see these 4 control points are the coordinates of the 4 points of the path. You can set keyframes for all the 4 points, move a little bit forward, then make it straight. Once you come to your middle point, you can set the same value. Mine is 540 to all the 4 points, and it's gonna become horizontal. I'm also gonna copy and paste the previous keyframes back again, and I'm gonna do the bouncing animation just like we did on the previous one. Copy and paste the same thing again, and then moving it a little bit up, and then copying and paste it again, and then moving it just a little bit down, and ease them. I'm gonna change the graph of the last 2 keyframes to something that looks like this. Okay, and that's pretty much it for this. So I hope you learned something from this tutorial. Go ahead and give a like to this video if you enjoyed this tutorial, and also you can go check out my Instagram to see some of my other work. And finally, if you like this type of content, consider subscribing.